As someone who's living in America, one of my dreams is to be able to travel to Japan. I've always wanted to go on vacation, and honestly, this is probably the best I'm gonna get. Getting this one to the table is pretty easy, but getting a group vacation up and running is no small feat. So, why don't we learn how to teach? Let's go to Japan. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for picking this one out. Good choice. If you're new to the show, you may not have known this, but every episode comes paired with a free downloadable and printable summary of this video. This time around, I'm thematically referring to it as the Sensei's Guide. This summarizes the video so you don't have to rewatch it, so relax, enjoy your ramen, and let's learn how to get some people excited to take a trip to Japan. Following the trend that I've seen in modern games released in the last couple of years, Let's Go to Japan can be one of those bait-and-switch titles you bring to your game night. It's like, on the surface, it just seems so innocent. It's just a cute little game about your upcoming Japanese vacation. That makes it pretty easy to get to the table and get a group of friends and family up and playing before they realize they've been tricked into a surprisingly involved drafting game. Getting someone to play this game once isn't too hard, but having that experience be good enough to warrant a second time through is where it gets a little bit tricky. As such, we're not going to spend too much time on selling this one as it mostly sells itself, but we'll go through the top level stuff. For the casual audience, Let's Go to Japan has some serious charm. It's got this watercolor art style that reminds me almost of traditional sumi-e art, with hundreds of gorgeously illustrated cards showing off nearly everything you could ever want to do on a trip to Kyoto or Tokyo. You really start feeling like you're actually planning a trip there after just a few rounds, especially if you take the time to read the lovingly written titles and descriptions of every single thing they put into this game. For the more hardcore players in your life, this game has surprisingly deep mechanical choices to make, and the best part is that those choices are made simultaneously. In this game, every turn is your turn, with some of the lowest downtime I've ever seen in a board game. Your friends who like the more directly competitive games may gawk at the lack of player interaction, however, the strategizing and planning that goes into building your schedule more than make up for it. If they even remotely liked games like Seven Wonders or Sushi Go for its theme or gameplay, they're going to love this one as well. In the spirit of this game, here's a haiku you can use to entice anyone on taking a trip to Japan. 2 cities, 1 trip. Draft, plan, travel through Japan. Become top tourist. I'm really proud of that. Alright, so this game has a lot going on once you get into it. Because of how the player board is set up, we can't do much to mitigate that, but we'll do what we can. I like to leave everyone's boards folded up on the table as I get the game set up, and they can open them whenever they'd like to. This just gives them a chance to look at the nice art that's almost exclusively printed on the back of these boards. Like, it's on the cards, but it's real tiny. On these, it's like really nice and pretty. It's big, it's huge, it's great, love it. I don't know what energy that was, but it's the energy I'm bringing. For the round tracker, don't bother putting it where everyone can see it, as it will mean basically nothing to everyone else, and will ultimately just wind up being a reference for you to instruct everyone else on what to do throughout their first game. So just put it right in front of you, leave it at that. And finally, the last thing I like to do is just make sure there aren't any of the generic activity cards in the top cards of the deck. This will make sure that you don't have to worry about someone drawing one of these cards and then having to explain them before you're ready. You only need to check the top 2 to 4 cards in so that you don't hit any in the first round specifically, but I'd actually go ahead and grab one of these and use it as an example later. Once you've got all that out of the way, you're ready to set your big 3. Setting the big 3 is all about getting your teach off on the right foot by establishing 3 key pieces of information. You need to set the stage, set the goal, and set the expectations. As we've alluded to earlier, this game has vibes upon vibes. Make sure everyone sees the lovely art on their player board before unfolding it to the calendar side, and don't be afraid to lean into the parts of Japanese culture that you're familiar with. If you're feeling extra, have plans to eat sushi afterwards, or maybe even serve tea during the game. Crank up that Hatsune Miku, or bust out some paper lanterns. This game wants you to see all sorts of fascinating aspects of Japanese history and culture, and the more you can do to emphasize that, the better. Just make sure you're being respectful and authentic as you do so. My calendar's upside down. This game is all about having the perfect vacation in Tokyo and Kyoto. It's in this part of the teach that I would call out the Maneki Neko icon that is used to indicate points in this game, just so that everyone's familiar with it. Obviously, getting the most points is the ultimate goal, but I would instead set the goal that they're looking to create a cohesive, fulfilling vacation while balancing stress and happiness. Once everyone's got their boards unfolded, I would make sure everyone knows the basic gameplay loop that they're getting into. Start by explaining that you'll be drawing cards that represent what activities you can do in either city, and then playing the one that you think will give you the best vacation under a specific day. This will go on until you've got 3 cards in every column, and I think of that as having planned like a morning, afternoon, and night activity. Then, and this is really important, you'll explain that at the end of the game, you're going to take your vacation through these events one at a time in chronological order, counting up icons as you go. Players need to know going into this game that it's more fun if you think about it in terms of actually planning a vacation, at least for your first game. Basically, 90% of your points are only scored at the end of the game after you filled out your whole schedule, so it's okay to not be sure what to do in the moment. I would mention that the best thing you can do if you feel like you can't figure out the best card to play is to just read the titles of the cards and pick the one that sounds the most fun to you. Once you've gotten all that out of the way, it's time to step into the dojo. For the teach. I don't know how to teach in Japanese. I don't know how to say anything in Japanese. I don't know why I'm clarifying that. Moving on. This is the sort of game that you're going to lean a lot on the theme to help out understanding the mechanics. As such, I start off my teach by drawing attention to the chunky favorable condition tokens. I explain these as the guideline for planning your vacation. Just like real life, it's best to pick specific days to try to hit certain events and locations so that you can avoid crowds, hit discounts on lower price points, and so on. So that is what the favorable condition tokens represent. If you want something to read out, page 4 of the rulebook has an amazing summary of these. The only weird ideal condition token to explain is the one for mood. I represent this one as sort of being the rest day of the trip. It's just the day you're planning on saving some money and energy by taking it easy. Once you've got the concept of these tokens established, walk through each of the icons on the tokens and talk about the literal day of the week you think would be best to visit that kind of place, and have everyone place the token on the same day. Normally this is done at random at the start of the game, however, by training people to put that symbol on that day, you're helping them internalize strategies that'll help them win the game later on. Once everyone's got their favorable condition tokens out, you can point out the experience tracker tokens and how these will be used at the end of the game to track your experiences. Every time you experience something in your vacation represented by icons on the cards, you'll move that experience tracker up one space. And if you've explained everything so far in the same order I have, you can transition nicely into mood tracking. The mood tracker works a little different. Instead of having a corresponding mood token on the experiences track, the mood tracker is all about experiencing the highs and lows of travel. At the table, I would reference page 11 of the rulebook, which has this excellent summary image on it. You can read these out to explain all 4 of the different mood icons, as I personally find them a little bit unintuitive. You typically don't plan to be stressed out during a vacation. That just happens naturally, at least when you travel with me. Once you've gone through all the icons, you'll talk about how everyone will need to balance their mood during their vacation, preferably having a good time if you're gonna swing one way or the other. This is where you can talk about how the mood tracker advances and how you don't want to plan too many stressful things in a row, or your mood will suffer even if you've been previously having a ton of good experiences. And it's at this point people start mentally checking out, so we'll move on to a part of the teach where they get to actually do something. What you're going to explain is that in the first few rounds, you're going to be drawing one card from both decks, and then you're going to fit one of those into your schedule. Have everyone draw their 2 cards and look at them. I start by having everyone look at the title and the picture and the description of each of the activities they drew to first help anchor down the theme before diving into the technical stuff. On this first turn, all you need to explain are the icons on the top. These represent the type of experience you'll have when you participate in that activity. If you've got a more casual group, I would just have everyone pick which of the 2 events they think would be more fun and have them schedule it on the day that they're looking to do that type of activity, matching the symbol at the top to the token for that day. I would also tell them, for now, ignore the bottommost part of the card and explain that that part only matters later in the game. Don't worry about it for now. However, hardcore vacation planners might want to know what that part of the card is, and so you can go into the highlight of the day bonuses if they ask. I don't recommend it. Regardless of which group you're with, you can assuage most hesitations by letting them know that they'll have a way to fix any problems their choice of card caused later, so you don't need to worry about it for now. Once they're done, double check to make sure everyone at least played a card with one matching symbol to the type of day they wanted to have. Then have them put their spare card on their neighbor's board, and then draw 2 cards to start the process over. At this point, you can congratulate everyone on getting through the first round of Let's Go to Japan. I know it sounds a little condescending to celebrate getting through what is essentially the tutorial of a board game, but I like identifying progress made towards getting to the end of the game when teaching new players. Plus, by having a definitive moment where you say, this is the end of the round, we're now on to the second round, you give people a unit of time that this game takes place over, and having that piece of information gives the game's pacing some momentum. While we're placing our second card, it's likely that people will now have a card from both cities, which makes an excellent moment to bring out the train tickets. Once someone needs it, pass out everyone's starting train tickets and grab the extra set from the box, and just let them know how these work. Just like real life, you'll have to travel between each city each time you change locations, so you'll need to keep that in mind as you schedule events. If they have to travel too much, it's going to add a bunch of stress to their vacation every time they do, but there are ways around those penalties. One of which are the generic activities, which can take place in either city and don't require any traveling, which hopefully was something you grabbed ahead of time since they are surprisingly rare in both decks, which makes them a pain to find in the moment. Hopefully, with the information you gave them, they'll have enough information to play their second card. You'll also want to make sure that players know that they don't have to play both cards on the same day or anything like that, but they're more than welcome to. Just reiterate that the only rule is that you can only have 3 events scheduled in a day. In fact, I would actually encourage them to try to spread out their schedule so that they leave room for any future activities they might want to squeeze in. And seriously, it'll make your teach so much easier if you can convince whoever's playing with you to avoid finishing up a day by putting 3 cards on it this early in the game. That's not really strategically true, but it helps putting off teaching the bonuses you get for completing a day, as well as those pesky highlight of the day bonuses until later. There are like 4-ish new mechanics that need to be introduced after playing their 3rd card to a day, so we're looking to push that as far back as we can to spread out the teach. Right now, players have taken in a lot of info, so we want a few rounds to process that, preferably through rounds 3 and 4. It's at this point where your teach will inevitably go off the rails, and you'll just need to explain mechanics where and when they start popping up. I'll explain them in the order that they should hopefully happen, but if someone jumps ahead, you'll just need to be flexible. Around the 4th round or so, hopefully everyone is catching on to the process of matching symbols to the type of day they want to have and the train ticket mechanic, so it's time for another wrinkle. Those cards that have wound up on their board, it's time to pick all those up. In addition to that, they're now picking out 2 cards to play each round. It's at this point where players are likely to start not appreciating the cards that they were given, so it's at this point I like to introduce the idea of going on a walk. Just like real life, if you don't quite know what you want to do in a new city or have a bunch of back-to-back stressful activities planned, you can just take a break, walk around, see if you stumble across something interesting. You'll explain that to go on a walk. You'll first just have to get rid of one of the cards in your hands that you hate, and then you'll blindly draw a card without looking at it and put it face down in your schedule wherever you think you're going to want to break. When you go on your vacation at the end of the game, you'll get to see what you find there when walking around. And again, just like real life, you won't know what you'll find until you're actually there. But if you happen to see something when you're on vacation that you don't like, or it would lose you points or whatever, it just isn't worth the effort, you can just keep walking. Put the card back, earning a few bonuses and some easy points. Going for a walk also introduces research tokens, and you can bring those up super briefly here, just saying something like, by deciding to put a gap in your schedule, that frees you up to do extra research about other parts of your vacation, which means discarding and drawing new cards. Honestly, I just leave it at that. The minutia of how all that works is not important until someone actually uses one of these. After the 3rd or 4th rounds, I keep an eye on what people have on their schedules and see if anyone has 2 cards on the same day, because if they do, that's where we're going to introduce the bonuses at the bottom of each card. You'll mention that this bonus is called the highlight of the day. When you're placing cards, you can schedule things earlier or later in the day by placing them behind or on top of another card in that day, and whichever one is on top and has its bottom section revealed, that's the one that's the highlight of the day, because you gotta save the best for last. I usually mention at this point there's a bunch of different ways that these work, but in general, they require you to have placed cards that have matching symbols earlier in the week, and then if you meet that criteria, you get whatever's on the right at the end of the day when you're taking your vacation. At this point, it's worth reiterating the expectation that we set up at the beginning of our teach, where we talked about how 90% of the points are earned at the end of the game when you actually go on vacation, and how these highlight of the day bonuses only really come into play at that point. I will level with you. This is the hardest part of this teach. These variable bonuses might seem straightforward to you, the person who's read the rulebook. Or maybe you just already know how to play. However, to a super casual player, they're practically unreadable their first time through, with all the different ways these bonuses manifest and the shocking number of rewards that they can give, and the fact that you're presented with so many of them in such a short time when they don't technically matter until you're way further on in the game. There's going to be some frustration with these your first time through. I don't know of a way to avoid it without explaining the rest of the game. Once you're past round 5 and you've started throwing down 2 cards in a round, someone is bound to fill in a whole day. Once someone actually plays that 3rd card to a day, you'll explain that they get to choose a bonus based on how many symbols they were able to match to that day's preferable condition token. The first bonus is the easiest to explain. It immediately gives you 1 positive movement on your mood tracker. Think of it as satisfaction for filling out your schedule. Remember when I said 90% of your score takes place at the end of the game? This is the remaining 10% that could score you points earlier than that. The second bonus is where things get tricky, as there are 2 new mechanics that you'll have to explain: research tokens, if you didn't explain them earlier, and wild tokens. Let's start with wild tokens. Usually you see wild tokens in like recipe delivery games where you need ingredients and the game gives you a resource that can be any resource. However, you usually spend those as you go, and in this game you don't go to Japan until the end of the game. So they're just kind of placeholders until you get there. Thematically, the game doesn't really do much to justify these. They're literally called wild tokens, and they just affect your trackers. So that means that I get to come up with something. If it were up to me, I would call these immersion tokens. These represent such a deep knowledge of Japan that you're able to squeeze just that tiny little bit more out of any experience you come across. Hence, why they can affect any tracker. Research tokens, however, are mostly straightforward, and we touched on them before, so no need to dwell on them here. Once someone actually wants to get new cards in their hand and has one of these, do you actually need to go through the process of drawing 3, discarding 3 by spending one of these? The third bonus is actually pretty straightforward. The top part of the bonus is the deluxe train ticket. The way I thematically explain these is that since you managed to optimize your schedule so well by planning all of one type of activity on that day, you can afford a little to splurge on a nicer train ride between the two cities, earning you extra points and happiness. You can use these at the end of the game whenever you would need to travel, and I know the rulebook says that they're not worth any points at the end of the game if you don't use them, but like, come on, man. I house rule it that if you don't use one of your deluxe train tickets, you get the points, but not the mood tracker bonus at the end of the game. In real life, if you had booked a train ticket and then didn't get the chance to use it, that means something went down, and that will make for a good story. A story that is worth at least 2 points. The second bonus is relatively easy to explain now that we've talked about research tokens and taking a walk. You just need to explain that, like with the train ticket, you've optimized your schedule so well that you can plan some extra downtime that day. This bonus gives you an extra card as if you took a walk, you just don't get the bonus research tokens that normally come with it. I know all these hieroglyphs at the top are a little bit arbitrary, so don't hesitate to reassure the table that you'll be happy to re-explain any of the bonuses as people finish out their schedules. I also recommend offering suggestions on what bonus to pick based on someone's current schedule, especially if they're a newer player that could use the extra encouragement. At this point in our teach, we're assuming someone has just played their third card to a day, which means that we just explained all the rules for completing that day in addition to the highlight of the day. It's a lot of rules that come into play all at once, so in the midst of all that, they might not have realized they're playing a card with the highlight of the day bonus that they will literally never reach. 2 things on that. 1, you're being real optimistic about life in general. If you can plan a highlight of a day for every day of your vacation, especially like the first 2 days you get to a foreign country, there will likely be a couple of days where you can't meet your highlight of the day bonus, especially on Monday and Tuesday when you're just starting to immerse yourself in the culture. Basically, don't sweat it if you can't hit 7 out of 7 highlights of the day. 2, let's be a good teacher in this instance. When someone plays their third card to a day for the first time, I give that player the option to rearrange those cards to pick which one they want on top for its highlight of the day. After they do so, if they wanted to, I would then make it really clear to the rest of the table that no one's supposed to rearrange the cards on their board. I believe doing it this way gives just enough leeway to the player who rushed a particular day of their schedule without being told all of the rules, while simultaneously not providing them with any kind of major advantage. If other players want to rearrange a day, they can go for it as well. We're learning the game. Who cares if they get a few extra points because of this? We were already planning to ignore this game for statistics on BG Stats anyways. Alright, cards have been played, trips have been planned between cities, you've explained day bonuses and highlight of the day bonuses roughly 7 times. You're finally looking at a full schedule for your trip to Japan. I think it's time we let's go to Japan. Before you get to scoring, double check on a few things, such as everyone having their experience trackers set to 0, and more importantly, everyone having at least 3 cards on each day. If someone has messed up and has an incomplete day for whatever reason, fill in any gaps with a walk from whatever city they're at in that point in their schedule. Make sure everyone has placed in their starting train ticket as well as any of the deluxe train tickets that they got. Then everyone will need to fill in any trips that still require train tickets with the minus point side up, which you could have been filling in before now, but once you get to this point, you'll want to make sure everyone has all of those in place before continuing. It's at this point you might have noticed I haven't really explained a lot of the mechanics around points. That was by design. We didn't talk in detail about the experience trackers giving you points, we glossed over the specifics behind the mood trackers points. I also don't mention too much of the way of strategy. That's because this is a game where if you're engaging with the core loop of matching symbols to the favorable condition tokens and hitting your highlight of the day for as many days as possible, you're naturally going to accumulate a decent sum of points and remain competitive. Obviously, if you've got hardcore gamer friends, everyone can simultaneously score their points for each day as you go through the week, but for a group of newer players, you'll want to go day by day, player by player. This can be where you really lean on the theme, having everyone talk about their day by reading out the activities that they planned on doing and doing a little bit of light roleplay about how they'd feel on going on such a trip. If your group isn't into that sort of thing, you could just skip straight to the points. For the competitive people in your life, I would say a score of over 100 is considered a typical good score, and the closer to 150 you got, the better you did. Don't forget to add in the pity points for the deluxe train tickets that went unused. Once you've gotten all the points added up, you can celebrate the amazing vacation everyone have and give a notable celebration to the person who had the most vacation. Just the best at vacationing. Hey, it's the Sensei's Guide! This instructional piece of paper has the entire episode summed up so you don't have to worry about remembering the whole video. It's available for free on my Patreon as a high quality PDF, or you can find it on BGG as a super compressed JPEG. Take your pick. Save it to your phone, print it out, leave it in the box for the next time you want to plan a Japanese vacation. And this episode was brought to you by my patrons. They voted for this game to be on the show, and I think they made an excellent choice. I appreciate their patience as I got this episode together. I do hope you consider throwing me a few bucks a month to help more people around the world get more games to their tables. Good lord, do we all know I need the income? That's all I got for you. Now go to Japan vicariously through board games. Okay, so I'm from Texas, so you have no idea how badly I wanted to include the phrase, Konichiwa, partner. Oh.